It's no secret at all to anyone that knows me that The Last of Us 1 is my favourite game of all time, and in my opinion, one of the only games alongside Portal, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and God of War 2018 to be nearly perfect in my opinion. With all that being said, I'm sure you can imagine that the release of The Last of Us Part 2 was my most anticipated of the entire year. I really wanted to see how Naughty Dog would carry on Joel and Ellie's story, and I'm gonna come right out and say the wait was well worth it. This game is quite simply a masterclass. From the combat to the writing and especially the acting, this game takes the video game medium to a brand new level, just like the first one did. However, the things that make this game so good are not that easy to explain in a spoiler-free review, but I will give it my best shot. So, without further ado, welcome to the Huntman Productions review of The Last of Us Part 2. This is Games to You. So this is where the first game truly shone. The characters and their relationships are what took that game from being good to something that changed how we look at video games. This game builds upon this and then takes things to a whole other level. The first game introduced us to Joel and Ellie, with the father-daughter relationship being front and centre. Ellie is clearly replacing the hole left in Joel's life after his daughter Sarah's death at the start of the first game. Throughout the game, this relationship changes from the two not talking or even liking each other to Joel effectively sacrificing the whole of humanity for the sake of Ellie.
I'm not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
you are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Part 2 isn't really anything like that. This game is all about revenge, death, and the brutality of the world. This doesn't mean that relationships aren't important, because in many ways they're even more so here than they were before. The people you meet along this journey of revenge all have different reasons to help you, and all have real personalities. This isn't just the main cast of characters, by the way, as even just random grunts that you kill have names. If someone discovers a body that you've left, they'll shout out their name in disbelief that their friend and colleague have been killed. This makes every kill you make have weight and makes you think more about just sneaking around a group of people rather than running in all guns blazing. This humanization of characters also makes you question all of the major deaths that happen in the game, and even feel sad when you kill one of the main cast that's against you. By the way, I just want to make a special shout out to Abby, who I really don't want to spoil anything about, and Dina, who was shown off in one of the trailers. Now, Dina is quite simply amazing. She's sassy at the perfect times, funny, caring, really well acted, and quite simply put, she's a badass. Her relationship with Ellie plays out in such an incredible way that I can only congratulate the writers, because it felt so real what the two of them go through that I was invested all the way through.
Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you. Or not.
Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl, not a threat. Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you.
The big one, of course, is the main character, Ellie, and she is acted perfectly by Ashley Johnson. The back-talking that we saw from the first game and bravery is still there, but she's grown up an awful lot. Ellie is now 18, has a tattoo to help cover up her bite mark on her arm, and it also is now a seasoned killer. At no point is she really against torturing someone to get information or staring at someone in the eyes before shooting them in the face. All of that childhood innocence is long gone, and she knows how to get the job done in this brutal, brutal world. Ellie does, however, have a softer side here, as she shows when she talks to Dina or any of her other friends. This soft side is especially clear when she plays the guitar throughout the game, and if I'm honest, this is one of my favourite things about the game. Throughout the world, you find a couple of acoustic guitars that you can play. This brings up a mini game where you have to move the stick around to pick the correct note, then strum using the touchpad. After a couple of notes, Ellie will then take over and start singing the song that you started, which is always a truly beautiful moment that shows the type of person she really is, and also the influence Joel has had on her.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
A little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
Now this is something I can't really talk much about without spoiling the game, but quite honestly, the story that Naughty Dog has created is amazing, devastating, and surprising. The story doesn't shy away from the events of the first game at all, and in many cases embraces the consequences of Joel and Ellie's decisions. The story is most certainly Ellie's story though, more than anything else, and how she deals with love, loss, and simply being an adult in this post-apocalyptic world. Every twist and turn feels like it has weight to it, and trust me here, the directions this story takes you in will both shock and surprise you.
I'm gonna find. And I'm gonna kill. Every last one of them.
A lot got made of the leaks that came out before the game that made people review bomb the game on Metacritic, but quite honestly, just seeing the story on paper doesn't look that good. But neither did the first game, yet that's still seen as the best the video game medium has to offer. This is a story you need to experience yourself, and when you do, you'll realise just what Neil Druckmann and the rest of his team have written and created. This truly is a masterclass in interactive storytelling, and this game is something that should be celebrated as such.
What do you think of this view, huh? It's pretty nice. Yeah, this route has its perks.
Just as the first game changed the way that we tell stories in video games, I truly believe this game will have the same legacy. This game is designed in a way to make you explore. Hidden away in small nook and crannies could be some vital supplies that you need so that you can craft enough equipment so that you can get through the next fight. Or you could also find a note or picture to give you some context about this world. Naughty Dog wants you to explore, and this is very obvious. You're shown very early on that scrounging for supplies is very important, and this only becomes more so as you progress through the game. The environments that the team have created here are absolutely huge and open, meaning you can quite conceivably get lost just because you went into a random building or down an alleyway just in the hopes that you'll find some alcohol and rags to make a health kit. These environments are also stunning, by the way, filled with long grass which moves in the wind and indoor areas which are dark and creepy. A lot of the indoor areas are completely optional and are often crawling with infected, meaning there's a large risk exploring them, but the rewards can completely be worth it. There is, however, some problems with these environments being so big, and that's pacing. Now, you can play a story-driven linear game like what Naughty Dog is known for making, and the player always gets guided down one path through whatever encounter needs to be completed so that you can get to the next bit of story to drive the plot forward. The problem is, when you make areas as big and open as they are in The Last of Us Part 2, you get this problem where there's too much time in between the plot moving forward. I never found this to really be a problem, especially when you're traveling with a companion like Dina, but if you're on your own, then there can be some long sections when you're just ambling around without saying anything and you're simply scavenging for more supplies. If you explore properly, however, you'll find random notes left around the environment that will give you some backstory about the area that you're in and the people that live there as well. Some of these notes you can find can be truly tragic, whereas some contain things like safe codes, which can grant you a lot of supplies. These notes, as well as paintings on the walls and corpses dotted around, help build this world as a truly tragic place to try and survive in, which for me really added to the story in a meaningful way. Away from Joel and Ellie, The Last of Us became famous because it revamped the zombie genre. This was of course down to the game not just throwing an army of the undead at you, but having a reason for them being there. The infected aren't technically zombies, they're still alive and become the way they are thanks to cordyceps that grow on the brain and sprout fungus out of their bodies. In the first game we had 4 different types of infected, but this second game adds to this in an incredible way. Now, runners are pretty much as they were, but stalkers have been improved a huge amount. They will now hide more effectively and jump out at you when you let your guard down. Whether this is from a closed toilet cubicle or from around a corner, they are truly terrifying silent hunters. Clickers, on the other hand, have had the most modest improvement this time around. They're certainly louder when they click and they can detect you more easily with that clicking. To top all of this off, they move around much more erratically than they used to, so are much harder to shoot with a nice headshot. Bloaters now have the ability to run straight through walls when they're chasing you, meaning that there is truly no place to hide. Just like in the first game, they are seen as major boss fights and take skill and tactical thinking to take down, but also a lot of running away to get yourself distance to think of your next move. There is of course a new type of infected, and this is called a shambler. These are kind of an alternative to bloaters. They get how they are by being infected for many years in areas with a lot of water. They throw spores at you which do damage over time, as well as being able to crush you if you get too close. These huge infected beings can also climb over ledges, meaning you can't use the terrain to get away too easily. With all the improvements to the infected, you can't simply sneak around them anymore without really thinking about it. You need a real strategy every time you take them on. You need to take them out in the right order as well, but when you do mess up, you need to know when and how to run so that you'll survive. Of course, being able to traverse massive, beautiful environments and taking down loads of infected wouldn't be all that great if the gameplay didn't back it up, and well, it does. The largest complaint most people have about the first game is that the gameplay doesn't quite match everything else, and well, I'd have to agree to a certain extent. Moving around felt very sluggish, and at times the gunplay didn't quite feel like it was good enough. Even though I know that was the point, but still. This time, Naughty Dog has put a lot of effort into everything to do with gameplay. Shooting for a start feels really nice. Every gun has its own feel, from the slow, heavy hunting rifle to the quick yet fairly weak pistol. Every gun has its place. You can now craft a silencer for your pistol, which is really helpful for sneaking around. I actually found myself prioritizing this and crafting arrows for the bow as much as I could because the stealth felt so good. Talking of the bow, by the way, just like in the first game, it's one of, if not the best weapon in the game, and it feels so good to use. Ellie is also a lot more nimble than Joel, so getting away from enemies works a lot better too. You can crawl under cars, fit through small gaps, and jump up higher ledges, giving you a lot more options. If anything, it makes the gameplay feel a little bit more like Uncharted at times, which I think is a great thing. Don't, however, think you're going into this as Nathan Drake, because unlike Drake and Joel, you're not going to be overpowering anyone in hand-to-hand combat. Instead, you're going to want to be dodging incoming attacks and looking for openings to get the upper hand. The combat still feels as brutal as it ever has though, and when you do deal a fatal blow, you'll get all the blood and skull smashing you could ever hope for. Even when you get hit, it feels like it has weight behind it. You know it really hurt, and this is no more apparent as when you get shot by an arrow. Basically, when one hits you, it drains your health slowly until you pull it out, which takes time. Whilst all this is happening, you can hear and see the pain that you're going through on the screen, which is honestly just incredible and brutal. As you can probably tell, this allows the combat to be free-flowing and quick, meaning that you move around each combat area quickly to get the advantage over anyone, but you can also use stealth to take it slow, just to make sure you survive. For stealth, The Last of Us Part 2 has taken a lot of inspiration from other games and made it work very well. First of all, the grass all over the place in this game can be different lengths, and depending on the length, gives you different amounts of cover for different types of stealth. So if you find some tall grass, you can crouch around just like in any game with stealth, but if the grass is a little bit shorter, you need to go prone so that you aren't detected. Going prone not only allows you to crawl through grass, but also go under cars and through vents, which opens up a lot more options when trying to deal with threats. Just like in the first game with the Fireflies, this game has the Washington Liberation Front and the Seraphites. You're going to come up against both factions a lot in this game, and these will be some of the most memorable moments of the game. The Washington Liberation Front, who is also known as the WLF or the Wolves, are a militia group who are both well trained and very well armed. The WLF also likes to travel in large groups and with attack dogs, meaning that they force you to make some horrible decisions, such as if to kill the dogs or not. These dogs will also pick up on your scent, so if you're not careful, they will track you down very quickly and bring the fight to you. On the other side, you have the Seraphites, who are also known as the Scars. These are a religious cult who use guerrilla tactics to take out their prey. This includes using bow and arrows a lot, as well as melee weapons. They do also use guns, but just not quite so much. To communicate, they don't just talk and shout at each other, they whistle, which is in many ways makes them more difficult to deal with. This is because when one whistles, they expect to hear the other whistle back, so if you've taken one out, the other knows something is up and is on alert right away.
Hold still.
Let's fucking go! Go! Run, Dina! Ellie! Right here! Don't slow down! This way! Hurry!
So in conclusion, The Last of Us Part 2 really is a special game. It's the type of game that only comes around once or twice a generation. There are definitely things that some people won't like, and even some things that people might hate, but for me personally, this game really is special. Sure, I don't agree with some of the choices that individual characters made, but I think in many ways that makes this a better game. The big question for me then is, how does this game stack up to my favourite games of all time? I think the first thing to say is that this is the best game I've played this year. In fact, it's the best game I've played the last couple of years. This generation has seen 4 of my 5 favourite games come out. Uncharted 4, Fallout 4, God of War, and yes, I have to put The Last of Us Part 2 in. The only other game in my top 5 is The Last of Us Part 1, because that came out last generation, and yet until this game was at the very top of my list without any real competition. The thing is, this game has really made me think about my top 5 a lot, and for the last few years, The Last of Us Part 1 and God of War have sat at the top as 1 and 2, but after playing this game, well, I don't think they can be 1 and 2 anymore. I can honestly say that The Last of Us Part 2 exceeded every expectation I had and has achieved what I thought was completely impossible. Naughty Dog has exceeded what they achieved with The Last of Us Part 1. They made a game which is better in almost every way. The writing, acting, gameplay, exploration, graphically, pretty much everything. As of me recording this right now, this is the best game I've ever played. Nothing has ever hit so hard on an emotional level before. No game has ever looked quite this good, and no game has ever had gameplay quite like this. So basically, as of right now, The Last of Us Part 2 is my new favourite game of all time, and my game of the year so far. In fact, I can only honestly see one game having any chance of beating this to the game of the year, and that's Cyberpunk 2077, and well, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Of course, make sure you're subscribed to find out, and whilst you're doing that, give this video a like and leave a comment on what your thoughts of the game were. For now, I'll close on this. The Last of Us Part 2 really is a masterpiece. It sets a new standard for video games. Just like how The Last of Us Part 1 and God of War changed gaming as a whole, not just with gameplay, but with how we view video games. The Last of Us Part 2 takes us onto a whole other level, to somewhere we could only dream about just a matter of years ago. So I just want to say thank you to Naughty Dog for creating something so special, and I really can't wait to see what they do next.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts, I've no need for any more. 'Cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me.